Hey, it's Jeremy from Oxnard Insurance, and it's the WCW Blast, Work Comp Wednesday Blast. Here we go. Last week, we talked about 4 ways to save money on your workers' compensation policy, some ideas on how to go about doing that. And this week, if you're done with your brackets, because it is March Madness, you get some time to think about some additional ways, some indirect ways, as we like to talk about, that affect insurance rates, but aren't always considered because we're always thinking about price potentially instead of what's affecting the price of my insurance. And so today on the WCW, we're going to talk about HR and how HR plays a critical role into 4 of the 6 components of risk at a business, which I think you could make the argument for the financial risk, the operational risk, the physical risk, and the reputational risk is where HR, human resources, plays a critical role in a risk management plan, because a risk management plan essentially looks at the 6 aspects of risk in a business, and then it provides steps. Some people say 4, some 5, some 7 on how to handle that. 4 simple steps to handle in an effective risk management program would be risk identification, the assessment, putting together the action plan, and then reporting and monitoring. So we can talk about it, but if we don't put something together to actually go and attack it and then monitor our results down the road, it's not really a plan. It's more of a thought or an idea. It's anything that's measurable and attainable can be put into a goal. So why is HR important when it comes to the financial, physical, operational, and reputational risks of a business? Well, let's talk about what HR does, and then we'll talk about some options that we know about to get HR services. So HR, before you hire an employee, has the documentation, the employee handbook, the expected content goes into that handbook, what the do's and don'ts of the company are. And who are they looking for as a candidate? What type of experience? So they're writing out the job postings and the job descriptions. And then HR is handling the hiring process. Why? Because they're the ones that created the handbook. And then the people that are doing the interviews are taking the pieces that they're looking for in the handbook and asking appropriate questions and for that particular job and the job description. They're not going off into tangents and sort of willy-nilly. There's a process that the HR folks have developed for interviewing. I know Dave Ramsey talks about, I think it's either 11 or 14 interviews that they do at Ramsey Solutions because they want to make sure, very, very sure that they have the right person. They'd rather spend more time in the hiring process and sifting out candidates than hiring quickly and then having to fire quickly. So they are long on the hiring process, and that's what we're suggesting here. The other things that HR can do as far as employment goes is documenting the employees and what is going on with the employees. It could be something that's not good. It could be disciplinary in nature, or it could be achievements. And then ultimately those result in either promotions and bonuses or terminations. Now, a misstep can cause, if the employer has a misstep in how we're handling reporting of employee situations, whether it's safety or just conduct and behavior that's not the way that the company wants it to be, and we're not properly documenting that, and then we just say, oh, you violated the policies and you're fired. Well, those can lead to what's called an employer's practice liability suit, where the employee claims wrongful termination that they weren't aware that they were violating these policies and procedures. The other side of HR where they're helping out is, we mentioned safety training before. And so now you have, well, what if we're not doing safety training? What if we're not doing ladder training? What if we're maybe doing a little bit of OSHA, but not what we really need to be doing? Because certain companies have to have OSHA documentation based on size and what they're doing. And those types of things can lead to an unsafe work environment. And God forbid, if we're talking about where an employee is disabled permanently, or, we all know stories about where they've lost their lives. And now the company is, the business is going to be in a world of trouble. And so I would assume that most of us that run businesses, we want to return our employees back to their families in as good or better condition than when they showed up at work that day. And so there's, in small business, which you got to categorize it. So small business ranges from solopreneurs up to about 250 or 500 employees, depending on which expert you ask. And there's going to be varying degrees of HR and HR departments. So I'm focusing on the companies that maybe don't have HR professionals on staff. And so the owner, it could be somebody who has 15 or 16 employees, and they're doing $2 to $5 million in sales revenue. And they're handling the HR, or the office manager is handling the HR. And that's where, if those folks haven't been experts in the HR field, there can be some disconnects between all of the policies and procedures, the employee handbook creation. Is it up to date? How's the training being handled? Is it being documented? And things of that nature. So thinking of it that way, there's three options: hire internally, an expert, outsource it, wing it, or use an HR platform to help bridge the gap between the expertise that you're not really going to focus to hire a specific, say, an HR manager with a number of years of experience. So let's talk about outsourcing. That's very expensive. However, depending on the size of the organization, that might be a very good option. You see that a lot in medical practice. Lots of medical practice outsourcing, where they're managing the practice for the doctors. And you also see that across other sorts of businesses that maybe don't have a full-time employee demand for an HR position, but they really need the expertise of an outsourced HR expert. It is pretty expensive, but I know in the past we have used an outsourcing HR company. There were a number of them to choose from, and I call it providence or dumb luck, got extremely lucky with who we were able to use, because they were fantastic and laid out the processes that we needed laid out for us, and we still use them to this day. So we are grateful for that. Winging it's certainly a decision. Winging it can open us up to more than just employer's practice liability and workers' comp claims. It can lead us to faulty work claims. It can lead us to professional liability. It can lead us to dangerous working conditions when we're off site. So that's probably the lowest one. Putting funds towards somebody who's done it before, maybe they're an office manager that has 5 or 7 years of HR experience. That's probably, that's where we can help bridge the gap with our HR platform, because the HR platforms typically are going to have the employee handbook by state and federal regulations, depending on where you're operating. So you go in and create the handbook, and then it updates through the different laws that are passed. That's a great way to do it. It also can provide safety training. And then probably the one, if the processes and the documentation is not really up to par for employee behaviors and documenting these sorts of disciplinary actions, there's an option for ask an HR expert. And boy, I'll tell you what, it'll save you money and time, and you pick up the phone and you call the HR expert that's on those HR platforms. And these people have a world of experience, and they can help give you the information and the knowledge that you need to make great decisions as far as your HR goes. Now, cost. Well, we talked about outsourcing, and it can be expensive, but is it worth it? I would, by my stories, and I know other professionals, I would say it's worth it. Winging it's pretty risky, folks. And then building the gap between somebody who has some experience that works for you and using an outsourced HR platform is probably the way that we see quite a few folks going, and size doesn't matter. The HR platform can be used in conjunction with an HR team as well. It doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. It just means that HR platform is an absolutely powerful resource for the business to utilize and help out. So where's the cost savings come from? Well, I can tell you from experience that a lot of larger payroll companies have these types of services attached to their what they're doing. And some of them are charging a substantial amount of money per month for just a phone number to ask an HR expert. And so if you're paying a couple $1,000 or $1,000 a month for just to pick up the phone to talk to somebody, that's something, and this isn't a sales pitch, but if your insurance company is providing more than just a policy and a price, there's going to be some value adds. And so you would want to talk with your insurance company and see if they provide these types of HR platform services. And that's something that we do. And sometimes there's a charge and sometimes there's not. It just depends on the utilization. And so we're excited to be able to share our HR platform with folks. And it's not a must. It's just one of those value adds that we add to what we're doing on the insurance side, because at the end of the day, if we can help avoid employers' practice claims and needless workers' comp claims because we're following the right HR guidelines, it's a win for everyone. It's a win for the insurance company. It's a win for your company, because as you well know from our last few videos on workers' comp, is that your scorecard, when it comes out and your claims are way higher than what they were supposed to be, you're going to pay more for the next 3 years on your workers' compensation insurance. And so that's just something that, we want to try to prevent those things whenever possible and help those claim management situations as best as we can. And so thank you all for joining us on WCW Blast, and enjoy the content. I hope it brings you value. Have a great day.